So finally, she stumbles into Pharaoh's court, where Moses was eventually, where he ended up being eventually. And then she notices that Moses was not nursing from any woman. There were like women brought after women, and he would not nurse from anyone. So then she says, maybe I know somebody who might be able to help you. So Pharaoh's wife, she's very excited. She says, bring her. And then Moses, she goes back and tells the mother. And then the mother comes. So when the mother comes and sees the baby that she had pretty much, dumped in the river, what's mentioned in the Quran, this whole story is not mentioned in the Quran. I mean, parts of it are mentioned, but not the entire story. What's mentioned in the Quran is that Allah says that when she came before her child, she was ready to burst out with her emotions. And she would have professed that this is my child. And had she professed that, then it would have been discovered that the child is also one of the children of Israel. And in that case, the child would have been killed. Pharaoh was just killing everybody who was born in the group of Israelis. But Allah says that He put a knot on her heart. Basically, He said, I controlled her emotions that helped her refrain from, spilling the beans. So the fact that parents love children is also from God. So this concept is very heavily established or strongly established in the Quran, that you cannot take anybody other than Allah as your benefactor, guardian, and friend. And what would happen to orphans if they don't have parents? What would you say to them? Or what would happen to people who don't have siblings, or friends, for that matter? So that's the second thing. The third thing is you cannot take anybody other than Allah as your judge. He is the sole entity who has the right to decide and to be a referee in terms of what's right and wrong, in terms of what's good and bad, in terms of what's low and high, what's sublime and what's disgraceful. So we have to look to Him to determine things that are right and wrong and lawful and unlawful. So these are some of the things that are explained in the Quran and also espoused in Islam in terms of Tawheed, or oneness of God. And it's the quintessential principle in Islam. Even the Prophet Muhammad, before he passed away, he said, don't glorify me as previous nations have glorified their elders or prophets. In terms of, he was referring to Christianity and also the people of Abraham and Noah. They took different deities as their God. And he said, so basically Muslims are not supposed to ask Muhammad to give them something. And that's why when people say, these are Muhammadans, it's objectionable to Muslims because we don't worship Muhammad. Muhammad was nothing but a human being with the message from God that he propagated to human beings. With that, I will conclude. I don't want to take too much of the time talking about this. It's a kind of dry subject, but I tried to formalize it. Now, after this, I will leave the forum open to you so that you can ask me any questions. I know that I was requested to mention or talk about Allah. If you have a question about that, I will address it happily. If not, if there are no questions, then I'll talk about it anyways. But I'll end here at this point. Any questions? Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think when people here, are there any non-Muslims here? You are. So tell me, I mean, I like to hear your opinion. When you hear the word of Allah, what do you think?
I think of an actual human figure.
Okay.
Instead of just concept.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
I'd say you identify Allah with Islam as opposed to God. I'm French, and so we translate also, we have a word for God. That's when, in my head, when we think about God, it will be God that Christians believe in, even though we believe in one single God, as opposed to Allah. Automatically, we think of Islam.
Okay. So you're saying that you believe in, as a Christian, when you refer to God, when you think of God, what do you think of?
I'm not Christian, but I was thinking of the linguistic aspects of God and Allah, and same thing in French, it's translated. They use words that, I don't know if I'm clear, but...
I Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing you, not understanding you. I just couldn't hear you well. The thing is, okay, so for example, you might think Allah is similar to Buddha. You know, Buddha is a figure. Buddhists, look up to. You might think of Allah as Jesus Christ. I mean, Jesus is a figure, he's a person, he's a human being. Or Mary. The reality of the situation is, Allah is not a figure. He is just God. And the reason why Muslims are peculiar in calling God Allah is because the belief of Allah is very pure, which means Allah is neither male or female. So he transcends gender. He transcends emotions. He transcends anything that binds human beings and that are human conditions. God is free of all of those things. Imagine like if somebody did something that God did not like. If he got angry, what would he do? I mean, if his disposition was similar to that of human beings, he would unleash on that person, right? But God says that he is merciful, he's compassionate, he gives to people who disobey him, people who obey him. His mercy is common to all creation. It's not specific to those who obey him and then, and then all of a sudden he's, angry and vengeful towards those who disobey him. That is not, God. So he transcends gender, he transcends all human conditions, he transcends emotions, and he transcends basically body, mass, time, space, matter. All of those things. He transcends all of these things. He is the confining force, and nothing confines him. And if you ask a Muslim theologian, so what is your description of God? They will say, we have some qualities, attributes that God, sort of identifies himself with, which is he's all-hearing, he's all-powerful, he's all-knowing, he's omnipotent, omniscient. All of these attributes and qualities are associated with God. But other than that, his actual form is beyond our comprehension. And that's what the Quran says. It's beyond our comprehension. Exactly what he's like, we don't know. But what we know is things that I mentioned, which is he created everybody, he sustains everyone, he gives them food and water and children and siblings and parents and wealth and education, and all circumstances are by the will of God. So, because of that, the perfect word for him is Allah. Because if you use the word God, God can be translated as goddess. So God denotes that, it's a male figure, whereas goddess denotes that it's a female figure. And then God can be translated as gods, which means there's a singular and plural form. But these variations exist with the word God. Whereas with Allah, it's a unique word in Arabic itself. There is, linguistic scholars and lexicons, lexicographers, they have really delved deep into figuring out and ascertaining the source origin of this word. Where did it come from? And they've all come up with various assumptions, and at best they're assumptions. There's no definitive answer as to where this word comes from. Which led many Muslim theologians to conclude that the name itself is as elusive to us and our understanding as the entity of God. So Allah, there's no singular and plural. There's no male and female version or masculine and feminine version of that word. It's a singular word that stands by itself, and it's not applicable to anything other than Allah himself, the God. So when we say himself, it doesn't mean that we're referring to a male or masculine gender. It's just that in Arabic language, females were referred with in reference to males, because females were considered, because it was considered modest to conceal females, or not to expose them. So from that angle, Muslims have a practice of referring to God as he, but it doesn't mean that God is he. He transcends that aspect of the gender.